Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be doing the would I repurchase these eyeshadow palettes sort of video. I was inspired by Baddie Bean to continue this video, so I thought that I would grab some more palettes from my collection and I would tell you guys if I would repurchase and if I would, why. So the first palette we have, funny enough, is the Baddie Bean and Shroud It's Freaking Bats palette. This is an amazing eyeshadow palette. I love it almost more than any other palette in my collection. It's just so beautiful. It's spooky. You got grungy vibes, but then you have like a periwinkle. It's just stunning, and honestly, yes, I would repurchase this. I really want the Halloween palette, but you know, money said no, and money needs to be saved to get makeup, but until then I got It's Freaking Bats and I love it. I would definitely repurchase it 100%. I love it so much. We then have the Odins Eye palette, and this is just a small little palette. I wouldn't repurchase this just because I don't need this type of little palette in my collection. I have these shades elsewhere other than this shimmer, which is really like unique. I would say it's like a unique sort of like shimmery green, I guess, if that makes sense. I think it's cute anyways, but I would not repurchase this just because this isn't a color story that I need. I have other green palettes elsewhere, so I would not repurchase that. We then have another Odins Eye palette. This is the Giant Wolves palette in collaboration with Annette, which is Annette's Makeup Corner on everywhere, like on all the socials, and it's just a really pretty palette. It's got lots of dark fun vibes. It has one multi-chrome, which is the shade down here, which is obviously the shade that I have used the most in this palette. And unfortunately my palette, like, I have issues with blending out the darker mattes. They aren't really that great for me, but I do really love the multi-chrome in this palette. The multi-chrome in this palette is just magical, so I would repurchase it just for the multi-chrome eyeshadow alone. Like, I just think it's such a pretty color, so I would repurchase it. The next palette we have is the Club Nebula palette by Kaleidos and Angelica on all the socials. She is honestly amazing, but I would butcher her last name if I tried to say it. But this palette, I wanted it as soon as I saw the color story. It just was so up my alley. I love the like peachy sort of tones and then the dark red. I love the grungy vibes. I like this like chartreuse color. I love the blues. The shimmers are really special. Some of them are toppers, some of them are more pigmented. Just overall, this is a really beautiful palette, and I would 100% repurchase it. It's just so pretty that I can't imagine not having it in my collection, and I hate when palettes are limited edition so bad, because like right now I know I can't purchase some palettes that are limited edition and I'm just like, no. But hopefully I can get the new Odins Eye like Christmas palettes, or at least one of them, because I do want it, but I can't buy it at launch, of course. But that being said, oh well. I would, anyways, getting back on track, I would 100% repurchase this palette. Like, it's so up my alley and it's so versatile in my opinion that of course I want it in my collection. Next we have an indie brand palette. This is the Clarity Cosmetics Magic Lamp palette. This is obviously inspired by Aladdin, and I'll see if I can show you it. Mine came broken, but this is the palette in all its glory. It is very beautiful, and I do like the shimmers. The mattes are not my favorite, but I do really like the shimmers. It's just the fact that this palette has all this fallout from a broken shade and stuff like that, it kind of makes me lean towards no, I wouldn't repurchase it, but I do really like the shimmers. So I'm gonna say this is like a 50-50 palette on if I would repurchase it or not. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but we're gonna say that I am, because honestly I think it's 50-50. Like, I think I would have to play with all the shimmers and all the mattes again and to get a kind of idea on if it's for me or not, you know. But it's in my collection and I do really like it, and I'd say it's 50-50 on if I would repurchase it or not. That's kind of a cop-out, but oh well, we'll deal with it. Next we have the Beauty Bay Earthy palette. I love Beauty Bay eyeshadow palettes. They come out with some really fun color stories. This is obviously just like a green palette. I wanted the bigger palettes, but couldn't afford them, so I got the 16 pan palettes. I also have the berries and the midnight palette, which I'm sure will end up in one of these videos at some point. But we have the earthy palette today, and it is a really beautiful green color story. It has some really interesting shades in here. Like this shade here, you can see in the pan initially, it looks like it would be lighter, but then as soon as I like actually swatch the shadow, it's like a very dark green. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I kind of liked how it looked initially. I thought it would be a little bit brighter, but that being said, I think that this is such a beautiful color story, and I actually don't have any other like green palettes in my collection other than like the Grinch Kylie palette, and I don't even really like that palette. So like this was my first like actual like green tone palette that I have in my collection, so I would repurchase it. Beauty Bay palettes are relatively affordable, other than when you order from Canada and you have to pay customs almost every time, and almost every time, no matter what you pay for the palette, you're paying like 20 bucks in customs and duties, which is ridiculous, but welcome to the Canadian life. The last palette we have to talk about today is the Be Perfect Cosmetics Carnival XL palette. Now, this is the XL Pro palette. I got the Love Tahiti palette first, and I was like, oh my god, I love that palette, so I wanted to get this one as well, because I've seen Missa, Make Me Up Missa, I think it was. I've seen her play with these palettes and she adored them, so I was like, you know what, I really want them. And honestly, what surprised me most about this palette is actually the like cool tone row here. I actually really love it. I think it's beautiful. And I typically don't like natural eyeshadows. That's just not me, as you guys can usually see in my looks. I tend to do bright and fun things, but when I do want like a cool tone natural look, I would definitely dip into colors like this for sure. But then of course you have all the other bright shades, and I think that this is a beautiful palette, but considering I have so many colorful palettes in my collection, I don't think I would repurchase it, because I definitely bought it like because I had the extra money at the time and I was just like, makeup, so I basically bought everything I wanted, and you know, can't do that anymore, so it is what it is. I would say though that I would not repurchase it, because I've used this maybe once since I bought it, let's be honest. Like, I've literally used it like once since I bought it, so that kind of goes to show that it doesn't need to be in my collection, but it's there, and I do love the colors, but I would not repurchase it. Let me know down below any palettes that you would 100% repurchase, because I would really love to hear what your favorite palettes are. For me, there are definitely a few in my collection that I would probably cry if anything happened to them, because I love the color story and the formulas so much. But yeah, I would really like to hear your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you subscribe. Comment down below any videos you'd like to see me do. Go follow my Instagram and TikTok, Makeup by Tasha XO, and I'll see you in the next video.